As we all know, Darth Vader's transformation from Jedi to Sith Lord was not a pleasant one. He was triple amputated, then was set on fire, and was then subjected to a gruesome process that saw him being rebuilt and shoved into his towering suit that kept him alive. His significant injuries meant that he needed frequent visits to his bacta tank to heal his horrifically scarred body for the next 20 years following his lost duel with Obi-Wan on Mustafar. But what about Palpatine and his part in the design of the suit? The relationship between Vader and Palpatine was not what many may suspect. In typical Sith fashion, it was a relationship that consisted of hatred, mistrust, and even fear of one another. Vader was no different to Palpatine's former apprentices Darth Maul and Count Dooku, in the fact that they were used as tools to ensure Palpatine's climb to power. Palpatine used Vader's suit as a way to control Vader, to ensure that he played along nicely. We know that Palpatine groomed Anakin to be his apprentice from when he was a young boy, influencing him and acting as a friend and a mentor. Palpatine identified Anakin as the one who he needed at his side, as his enforcer whilst he ruled the galaxy, together but not as equals. When Anakin's misjudgment and mistake against Obi-Wan almost impacted the master plan, Palpatine realised that he needed to have greater control over Vader. Vader was now burnt and severely injured, and he was no longer the same person as before. Anakin was dead, and Vader was what remained. When Palpatine found Anakin on Mustafar, after the duel, he weighed up his choices. He could either kill him and find another apprentice, or he could let him live, being fully aware that he probably would not reach the same potential power that he would have had he not been injured. His decision process is actually explained in the novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader. Because he had spent over 20 years moulding Anakin to become his apprentice, he did not want all of his time and effort to go to waste. He decided that he would let him live, but he would make him suffer for the rest of his life to remind him of his failure. Palpatine built his life support system into his suit rather than into his body, meaning that we'd have to spend his life encased in his armour. If he was to remove his helmet for any prolonged period of time, then he would die. Inside of his suit, there were thousands of needles that would send data to his life support system, controlled through the box on the front of his body. The data would ensure that the systems kept him alive and provided data readings and medication when and where it was needed. These needles left Vader in agony for the rest of his life. He wanted Vader to be in pain, to cause humiliation and anger that could be drawn upon when it was needed, ensuring that he had a stronger connection to the dark side of the Force. Whilst this may sound strange to us, it is important to note that Vader uses anger and hatred to fuel his powers. Whilst he was not in his suit, he was meditating in his chamber or bacta tank, wallowing in guilt and anger over the death of Padme and his part in Order 66, as well as reliving his anger and hatred towards Obi-Wan and Palpatine. This is part of the reason why he built his fortress on Mustafar, the planet where he's lost his battle to Obi-Wan. Although Vader's suit in relative terms was an engineering masterpiece, the individual systems were actually outdated and overly bulky. This meant that he would be less mobile and would not be able to move as fast, and would therefore have to rely on his connection to the dark side of the Force rather than his physical abilities. Not only did this act as a punishment, but it also meant that Darth Vader could only operate at a percentage of his actual potential. Palpatine was very aware that Vader may one day try to overthrow him, as was custom with the Sith rule of two, where the apprentice would eventually overthrow the master and then seek out their own apprentice. To mitigate this, he built in further weaknesses to the suit. Palpatine's weapon of choice was the Force, over the use of his lightsaber, and he had a particular fondness for Force lightning. Palpatine ensured that Vader's life support system was susceptible to electricity, and we see this as the principal reason as to why Vader dies at the end of Return of the Jedi, after being hit by Palpatine's Force lightning. Any significant blast of full-powered Force lightning would fry the life support systems, meaning that Vader died a relatively quick but painful death, as his breathing apparatus stopped and his organs began to go into failure. Vader knew that he was not powerful enough to take on Palpatine alone, which is why he tried to get Luke to join him, so that they could rule the galaxy together as father and son, and destroy the Emperor in the process. We see that Palpatine also had plans for Luke, seeing him as having the ability to live up to the potential that Anakin never managed to reach, and wanted him to strike down Vader and take his father's place. As we know, Luke chose neither side, and Vader turned to the light, sacrificing himself in the process, falling victim to the weakness that Palpatine had built into his suit. Make sure you subscribe and drop a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Your support goes a long way to ensuring that we continue to make great Star Wars theory videos.